Well, thank you so much to all of you for being here. And today we're going to be sharing with Kevin and myself the session on theme 1. So first of all, it's just a real privilege to be here with all of you, with Kevin and all the panelists as well. And thank you so much to the World Health Organization for organizing all this amazing work. So I think that over these 2 years, over these 2 days, we're going to have amazing, sorry, I have a problem with time. We're going to have very good opportunities to discuss and reflect on the ethical challenges. Myself, I am a researcher, I'm an ethicist, so probably I do have many questions to all of you as well. In terms of the climate change, there is no doubt that anthropogenic climate change is one of the most important challenges of the 21st century. However, it is not the only one. And I briefly emphasize not the only one because actually it is true. Although humanity is in one of its best moments in history, with the lowest maternal and child mortality rates, declining levels of poverty, and remarkable technological advancements that have contributed to an increased life expectancy, we are still facing important social inequities between and within countries that actually leave a lot of people with no access to basic services, with no access to healthcare services, and even without enough food at the end of the day. So added to all this, we are also facing significant challenges in terms of the air, water, and soil pollution, as well as an alarming decrease in biodiversity. All these overlapping challenges are not a result of natural processes. Instead, are a result of our own decisions and choices. Choices about strategic planning, governance, power distribution, resource allocation and investment, development pathways, urban planning, among others. Choices that in the end have strong repercussions on our own health and prosperity and on the planet on which we depend. In the context of climate change, these choices caused the problems in the first instance. When we decided to cut natural forests at very fast rates and to invest in and use fossil fuels despite having evidence on the associated emissions that will be able to affect the climate system. What is worst is that up to November 2024, we continue to do it, resulting in increasing greenhouse gas emissions year after year, and a continuing global warming. Also, similar choices and decisions create and exacerbate vulnerabilities to climate change, turning climate and climate change-related hazards into disasters. And now, you can infer that disasters are not natural. Most climate and climate change-related disasters are consequences of our own choices in relation to risk mitigation and climate change adaptation. We are seeing that climate change acts as a magnifying glass for existing human-caused social inequities and vulnerabilities. It reveals and intensifies inequities based on income, gender, ethnicity, age, geography, access to basic services, and others, including all social determinants of health. As a result of a changing climate and social vulnerabilities, we see a steady increase in heat exposure, heat stress, and heat-related mortality, with communities with fewer resources struggling to adapt and losing labor productivity with economic consequences, creating some vicious cycles. We also see an environment that is more prone to wildfires, with remarkable events in Australia, the Amazon, Canada, and Greece, which led to thousands of people affected and several dead, and millions exposed to air pollution. Droughts and heavy rainfall events are occurring simultaneously throughout the world, affecting livelihoods, food production, income, and the health of small communities who often have to face these events by their own. Despite the increasing amount of information on the effects of climate change on the health and well-being of populations, international negotiations to local policies are not responding to the urgency of the problem, leaving millions behind and potentially exacerbating current and future climate change risks. With this in mind, addressing the complex relationship between climate change and health challenges from research to action, it is not just a matter of science and policy, but also a very ethical one. So with that in mind, I would like to give the floor to Kevin, who is the expert on this.
So the focus of this forum is on the ethics of research into health and climate change, and this first thematic session is on the ethical challenges that arise when this kind of research also involves interdisciplinary approaches, co-production, and integrating indigenous knowledge. And as the introductory paper suggests, what we are interested in are the unique or specific ethical challenges that arise out of this kind of research, or the challenges that we already know exist, to which scale or urgency will be added by this research focus. Since this is our first thematic session, I thought I would share some ideas with you on how we can identify and bring these specifically ethical challenges to the surface. When we were reviewing the first drafts of the case studies for this forum, we noticed that many applicants really struggled to identify and describe ethical issues related to the research. In many cases, the research project did not initially set out to focus on ethical challenges, so it was necessary to do some new thinking about the cases. And as often happens when researchers who are used to doing empirical research try to think about the associated ethics, the questions were often on how-to questions, how-to issues. And when we want to identify and describe ethical challenges, however, we need to start not with how-to questions, but with questions that are about oughts. Ethics is about how we ought to act. It's concerned with moral responsibilities of various actors or stakeholders. So when we identify ethical challenges, we are looking for ethical obligations, the things that are good to do and would be bad for us not to do. Or we are looking for things that are prohibited or impermissible. It would be bad for us to do them and good for us not to do them. So one way to identify ethical challenges is to ask what obligations or duties arise out of our research and whether there are any impermissible or prohibited actions that might arise. In other words, are there actions that researchers, funders, IRBs, or research ethics committees, policymakers, or others involved in the research either ought to do or ought not to do? Now, once we know we are looking for obligations and prohibitions, there are a few other questions we can ask that can help us. For instance, in what ways might this research cause harm, or infringe on rights, or be unjust or unfair, or be disrespectful, or be wrongfully discriminatory? Or we might also ask in what ways we ought to discriminate in order to protect the vulnerable, or in what ways our research might increase the vulnerability of others, and what our moral obligations are in response to this. Now, because our focus in this session is on health and climate change research involving co-production and indigenous knowledge, we should be asking questions about how our ethical responsibilities change when communities become not just participants, but take on an expanded role as co-researchers or experts whose knowledge we are going to be using in the project. What new oughts arise? For instance, are we required to adopt a more pluralistic theoretical or even a relativist theoretical framework when we work with others whose worldviews differ from ours? Now, since our primary focus is on the ethics of health and climate change research, there are two other questions I think we need to ask. The first is that in recognizing that climate change will not affect just humans, but other life on Earth as well, we need to be asking about the harms and injustices our research could cause, not just to persons, but to non-humans too. And because the worst harms of climate change will only be experienced by future generations, we also need to think about how our research or our failure to do important research or ask important critical questions could harm future humans, non-humans, and the environment that supports us all. So to identify ethical challenges, we need to start with ought questions. Look for obligations and prohibitions, and remember to consider not just humans and not just the present generation. So with that brief introduction, we'll continue on to our presentations, and our first presentation is going to be given by Admire Nyamwanza of the Institute of Natural Resources in South Africa.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Admaya Nyamwanza. Many people find funny in my, they are very interested about my name. And anyways, I'm a principal scientist, researcher at the Institute of Natural Resources in South Africa. And I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to thank the organizers for selecting my paper, my submission. And apologies, I have a sore throat, so my voice projection might be a bit problematic. I think, fine. So, my presentation is entitled An Impact Evaluation of Climate Adaptation Actions on Nutritional and Psychosocial Health in Rural Mid-Zambezi Valley. So, essentially, this was a project that we carried out from 2019 to 2022. So what I'm doing here is to review and discuss some of the ethical issues and challenges that arose from that project. This was a Wellcome-funded project, and so as I have already said, it aimed at evaluating nutritional and psychosocial health outcomes of selected adaptation actions. And Valley, the map there shows the area that we worked in. It's communities at the confluence of Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Mozambique. And it's one of the climate change hotspots in Southern Africa because a lot of climatic and non-climatic challenges converge to create quite serious vulnerable conditions. So these are the three the adaptation actions that we selected to evaluate, shifting from predominantly maize farming in main dryland fields in that area to drought-tolerant sorghum production over the years because of serious droughts. Also increased reliance on indigenous knowledge with respect to consumption of wild fruits, again, due to increasing droughts and drought cycles. The third adaptation action that we evaluated was around increased reliance on, again, indigenous knowledge, but this time with respect to different indicators, meteorological, insect, atmospheric, to predict increasingly erratic rainfalls and droughts. So what are the ethical issues that we explored here? So the first has to do with how and why research into health and climate change should be participatory. The second issue was around ethical issues that arise from interdisciplinary research. And the third issue was around researcher obligations to participants exposed to dangerous climate risks. This is in the context, as I've said, of this area, the case study being a climate change hotspot. So the first issue around how and why research into health and climate change should be participatory is grounded in ethical considerations around epistemic justice, particularly issues of hermeneutics. Now, hermeneutical justice has to do with barriers that restrict or prevent certain groups from contributing to understanding issues. And so this has to do with the philosophy of interpretation. And so in the context of climate change and health research, this has to do with dismantling knowledge hierarchies and navigating different worldviews, as it were. I think Julian touched on that in his earlier presentation. So how did we deal with this issue? Well, still on, defining this. So it has to do with creating platforms and processes for diverse ways of knowing. And why is it important from an ethical perspective? So from a moral perspective, health challenges are inherently personal. So there has to be the creation of those participatory platforms that will assist in shaping narratives. So as a research team, we tried to address this challenge by collectively identifying the adaptation actions that were to be evaluated together with the communities. We also collectively defined and refined the research questions that we were exploring, as well as establishing partnerships with key community stakeholders in preparation for project implementation. In implementing the project itself, we included participatory workshops, interactive focus group discussions, thereby allowing for very extensive participatory processes. The second issue that I have mentioned has to do with ethical issues that arise from interdisciplinary research. And as noted in the background paper to this meeting, given the scale and urgency of the impacts of climate change on health, it is very important from a social justice perspective to involve different and wide range of views, approaches, perspectives, to ensure that the right questions are prioritized, and that as researchers, we fulfill a moral imperative to translate research findings into action. So to get to these impactful and transformative results, we need to incorporate conceptual and methodological strategies that involve different disciplines. And to this end, our project team was very multidisciplinary, and it comprised of researchers from different backgrounds, social science, health, economics. We had a nurse on the project. And beyond the interdisciplinary imperatives of including different backgrounds, though, there were issues that arose from our team because of our interdisciplinary nature. And this also had ethical implications in themselves. So there was dominance of some disciplines over others. And this then was challenging because there has to be equality of respect for all disciplinary approaches. So to address this challenge, we adopted the work package approach, whereby we divided our team into different work packages: the nutritional health work package, the psychosocial health work package, and the adaptation work package, where the different scientists and researchers worked in. And we saw that this fostered some sort of equality of respect among the disciplines involved, and advanced issues of fairness and inclusivity. So the failure to address these disparities among disciplines, again, perpetuates biases, and it can lead to distorted research outcomes. The last issue, the last ethical issue, has to do with our obligations as researchers and scientists to participants exposed to dangerous climate risk. So the issue is research involving participants at some degree of climate risk raises ethical questions about our obligations as researchers on how we can assist in responding to that risk. And this has to do with the ethical issue around the physical and mental health well-being of research participants. How do we take care of that as researchers? So as I have noted before, our case studies it's very much a climate change hotspot, where participants are exposed to dangerous climate risks like floods and droughts. So we had to be alert to critical ethical issues around managing participant expectations and provision of post-research support. So we had to be very transparent about the aim of our project and making sure that we are upfront to our participants that There is no food aid involved, or material support or benefits involved. Yeah, so we are also aware that some of the questions that we were posing could trigger traumatic memories of unpleasant past experiences. Therefore, we had to include a mental health officer into the team who would assist with the provision of counseling and support services for those participants who required these. So, in conclusion, what are the two main recommendations emerging from our study? Firstly, that there should be clear guidelines on what ethical questions and dilemmas are anticipated and how a research team plans to tackle those. And not only ethical guidelines, but also we also have to reflect beyond those guidelines. So for us, we constantly reflected on these, and we also subjected our ethical considerations to ethics review by two research ethics committees, one in South Africa and the other one in Zimbabwe. So these were very important in raising some key ethical considerations, especially around adding some expertise into our team that we had overlooked. And they emphasized this because our research was about health and climate change. A second recommendation is that research teams working on climate and health issues should be as multidisciplinary as possible towards impactful and transformative results. So what we saw is that our project findings resonated with different scientific and non-scientific stakeholders. And as I have noted there, one of the key reasons was that our project team comprised of researchers and practitioners from different fields. Thank you. So that was my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Admire. Please just stay there for a minute. We are going to have an opportunity to discuss both of these presentations in a moment, but in the meantime, we just wanted to check if anyone has any questions for clarification. Yeah, please.
Hi, very good presentation. Thank you, Admire. I wanted to know when you speak of the dominance of some disciplines, which were these disciplines that tend to dominate, and how did you work it out? And if you could really stop them from that relationship.
Thanks. Thank you. So I deliberately did not go into that point because I'm aware that we have others from that discipline. I think maybe more than 80%. So colleagues from the health discipline tended to dominate because they wanted to push, I don't know, say a narrative that this is a health research. But then it was also very much a social research because we wanted to look at the intersections between different vulnerabilities that would then affect the health outcomes. So colleagues from the nutritional health, psychosocial health disciplines tended to dominate, and as I have said, we had to divide the team into different work packages where different voices from the social scientists, from the health economists, then found their voice as well.
Thanks. One more.
Thank you. I admire your presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, just to follow up on the question that was asked, is it possible that those imbalances as for one profession wanting to take an upper hand compared to others was as a result of the ones that initiated the study or the initiative? Or did they have an opportunity to co-create the components of this study? Was it a multidisciplinary approach from the beginning? I would like to have your comment from that.
Okay, thanks. It was not because they are the ones who initiated the study. I was the PI, and I'm not a health person, I'm a social scientist. But so what we did was as a team, we naively thought that we could navigate those dynamics without really talking about them, you see. So, but then, as the study started to progress, we saw that we could not move in the way that we had initially structured the team. So that's how we then went to the work package approach. So, it was not that they were not finding space to express themselves or to bring out their voices. I don't know the reason why they thought they could dominate the social scientists or the other disciplines. But that was what happened. Yeah.
Thank you. So one hand, I think we'll have to cut after this one, and then any other further questions of clarification you can bring up during the discussion time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep it quick. Lovely presentation, very thought-provoking. Just one question. Whether the participants had any role in interpreting the data. While you're talking of multidisciplinary, did they have a role in interpreting your findings?
Yes. So what we did is, after initially collecting the data, we went back to the communities. We presented what we had, and we allowed them to sort of validate the issues that were coming out. Not only that, also further inputting what they thought were the gaps in the initial findings. So yes, definitely they had a role in interpreting the data.
Thanks to Admire for leading the way and also being on time. Thank you. Our next presentation will be by Anne Vu from the National Centre for Social Research in the UK.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. I'm really honored to be here today. But first of all, I have terrible jet lag, so during my presentation, if I talk anything nonsense, please. Sorry. So I have terrible jet lag. I couldn't sleep last night. So if anywhere I don't make any sense, please accept my apologies. So good morning, everyone. It's really my honor to be here today to talk about something that is not only urgent, but also deeply human. The ethical challenges of researching the health impacts of climate change on informal, precarious outdoor workers in urban settings in a lower middle income countries like Vietnam. And these challenges are not just academic, but they are about real people, about their lives and about their futures. So let me start my presentation by showing you these pictures. Okay, they are the real pictures captured by my research team. It's not the AI generation. Okay, so these are the workers. These are the faces of the workers who inspire our research. So who are they? They are the street vendors. They are the construction workers. They are the porters, and they are motorbike taxi riders. They are the backbone of our urban economies. They keep our cities running, but they are facing their everyday struggles, including job insecurity, chronic income insecurity, and lack of social protection. So now these pre-existing vulnerabilities are exacerbated by the climate change impacts. So our project is funded by the Wellcome Trust, and I'm the PI of this project. It is recently kicked off in February 2024, and it will end in July 2026. We try to understand, in this project, we try to understand the health risk of these precarious outdoor workers, their vulnerabilities, and their strategies to adapt, and to explore what are their adaptive capacities and how the policy interventions and how the major stakeholders can do to support, to unleash their adaptive capacities. And we have 4 research sites. You can see Hanoi is the capital city of Vietnam, Da Nang, the coastal city and also the biggest city in the Central region, Ho Chi Minh City, the biggest economic hub, and Cần Thơ, the hub in the Mekong River Delta. And I think many of you are familiar with the Mekong River Delta here. So we, but in this project, we are not just stopping at generating new evidence or new data. We are working to ensure that our research leads to the actionable outcomes. So while conducting research, there are several ethical challenges, but in this presentation, I focus on 3 issues. The first one is the risk of reprisal for workers participating in the research. And the second one, why it's important to talk about the intersection of vulnerabilities other than climate impact. And third, how to turn academic research into the social policy. So the first, the risk of reprisal for the workers participating in the research. Constructing evidence with the co-constructing new evidence with the informal outdoor workers directly in our research is a cornerstone of our approach. And these workers, you know that they are the experts on their own lived experiences, but their voices are often absent from the conversations about the policies and interventions that directly affect their life. So involving them, engaging them directly in our research, ensure that the solutions we propose are not just academic, but also deeply rooted in their realities. However, this empowerment is not without risk. These workers, they tend to work in the precarious environment with little or even no legal protection, and their livelihoods are often informal, making them vulnerable to the actions by the employers, by the local authorities, or by any those who might perceive their participation in the research as a threat. So speaking out about their own vulnerabilities, especially in the context of marginalization and injustice, could put them at risk. They might risk losing their job, they might risk facing targeted harassment, and they might risk, some damage to their own lives. So, for example, a bricklayer, a very low-paid physical job, who discuss their challenge with the research team publicly may risk losing their job, or, lack access to the certain working environment. So, and these risks, are not hypothetical. They are the real and present and future, and they are the real and present threats in the lives of these outdoor workers. And how we address this challenge, and obviously we need to prioritize safeguarding as a top priority. We inform participants of potential risk in clear and accessible terms. And this communication about the potential risk is not one-off event. It's not the signing the letter of consent. It should be transparent and ongoing process in timely manner. And the question that I have been asked by my brilliant reviewers over there, that why it is important to get this right, why it's important to protect these workers, because failing to protect them adequately could lead to real damage, loss of livelihoods, exposure to harassment, and even worse, risk to their own lives. And for a population that already on the margins of, are living on the margins, these risks could compound their existing vulnerabilities and pushing them deeper into poverty and insecurity. So we need to get it right, because it's a matter of principle. And also giving these workers a platform to share, to voice their own concerns and to share the experiences is an act of justice. But justice cannot come at the cost of their own safety. And if we fail to protect the people who trust us to tell their stories, we fail the very purpose of this research. The second challenge we want intersectional vulnerabilities other than climate change. The workers we are researching, they are facing a web of interconnected challenges. And beyond the immediate threat of climate change, they also contend with chronic job insecurity, chronic income insecurity, and lack of access to basic social protections. And these overlapping vulnerabilities do not exist in isolation. They amplify one another. And why it is so important ethically to pay attention to all these intersectional vulnerabilities, because if we don't, we will risk focusing narrowly on climate resilience without addressing the structural inequalities that make these people vulnerable in the first place. For example, a heat wave is more than simply a climate event. For an informal worker, without the healthcare insurance, without the legal protection, it is this heat wave is a threat to their livelihood, to their health, and potentially to their life. So an intersectional approach helps us avoid framing climate risk as separate from the other challenges. It reminds us that the solutions we are proposing must tackle both immediate and systemic challenges, and ensuring that workers' rights, basic needs, and their livelihoods are prioritized alongside climate adaptation. And the last one is, I think, also a very daunting one, is a challenge in translating research findings into actionable policy recommendations. So why translating research into policy is ethically important, especially in the context of this research, especially in the research about the precarious elder workers. Because for these workers, policy can mean the difference between vulnerability and resilience. For these workers, policy can mean the difference between exploitation and dignity. So policies informed by research can ensure better health protection, improve working conditions, and equitable climate adaptation measures. But this is not an easy task, because policy making, policy experts here, that policy making often involves competing priorities, and local governance realities do not always align with our research recommendations. So navigating this gap between research findings and policy recommendations, or policy implementation, requires us to think critically about how we frame our findings and how we engage with the policymakers. And I think this question also requires to be honest to ourselves, how we frame the issue, how we frame our findings in a way that resonates with the policymakers, but at the same time, it is not reductionist, but still resonates with the local governance realities. And most importantly, how we ensure that our recommendations are taken seriously and acted upon. And these are the big questions, and answering them requires genuine collaboration, genuine co-construction, and persistence, and building genuine coalitions that can advocate for actions. And of course, doing all of this will raise several ethical and also practical challenges as well. So, what is the path forward? Despite these challenges, our research team still remain hopeful, and as Admai talked a lot about the participatory research and co-construction, we think that participatory research, where workers' life experiences are put at the front and at the center, can be incredibly powerful as long as we handle it with care. And collaboration across disciplines is equally essential. And even if it's not always easy to align different methodologies and different perspectives. And I think in the Q&A session we can talk more about what we face in conducting this interdisciplinary research in my project, and co-construction as well, because we really advance co-construction with the workers in this project. But time is limited, I couldn't go into detail about this process. And so by how we can mitigate the dynamics, the complex dynamics of co-construction and interdisciplinary. So for us, from our experience in this research, from the day one, we build a shared understanding from the start and create spaces for ongoing learning and knowledge sharing. And we need to be honest about the limitation of our own discipline, of our own comfort zone, because and how we are willing to accept the alternative knowledge, how we are willing to accept the knowledge from the workers, and we do not champion our scientific knowledge over the workers' knowledge, because they are their own experts in their own lives. So to end my presentation, one thing I want to emphasize that this research, this work is about more than research. It is about justice, justice for the workers who keep our cities moving, and justice in addressing the inequalities that climate change exacerbate, and justice in making sure that policy reflects realities of those it aims to protect. And thank you very much for the attention. I look forward to discussing further. Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, if there are any questions for clarity. Yeah.
Hi, and just a quick question. When you mention authorities, local authorities, what are you referring to? Police, I don't know, Ministry of Health, the President, or I don't know?
Sorry, I couldn't give some political context of Vietnam or my project. So Vietnam, is a one-party system, one glorious communist party system, and we have. So by local authorities here, I refer. Not easy to, I think I have a problem with standing still. I have to keep moving. So I think the local authorities, we refer to all those they are mentioning. You are referring to. These are local authorities, local government. It is the local neighborhood unit, which are set up by the government. You know, this is like party-affiliated entities living in the neighborhood who monitor the activities of the civilians in that neighborhood. So each neighborhood has that kind of entities, you know. I don't know if anyone coming from the same system like my beautiful country here, but so like so local authorities, we can be police because it can be state affiliated entities who are deeply embedded in the neighborhoods, or you know, they can be I think the party affiliated associations, entities as well. They have all the mechanisms set up to monitor the activities of the people. So these workers, because they always live in the chronic vulnerabilities and uncertainty and precarity, they tend they have fear. They have hidden fear. You know, the fear from the employers, the fear from even the landlords, because these workers, they tend to live together in a very low quality settlement, and the landlord, who always have very good relationship with the local authorities, with the local police, they will report back. You know, they will report everything that happened in that neighborhood in their accommodation back to the local authorities. So out of workers, we think that they are everywhere in the street, but actually engaging them, working with them is not easy, because we need to build trust, because they already have fear. Some of my research team, when we approached them, they thought that we come from the black market, borrowing, trying to cheat them, to ask them to invest in the black market. You know, so a lack of distrust a lot among this population.
Okay, I think we're going to have to move over into the discussion forum. So any other questions of any kind, just please bring them. And I'm going to hand over to Jasna to handle this section. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. Well, yeah, I think we are a little bit behind of the schedule now, but we have some minutes, actually 8 minutes according to that timer, to ask any question. If you have any comment, please, we value it, but be a little bit brief, so we just give the opportunity to other people as well. So do you have any reflection, comment, present question? I'm going to give here and over there, a little bit mixed.
Thanks for the presentations. A brief question to you. How was the co-construction process done? Because it seems somehow that it was a bottom-down instead of bottom-up approach. Oh. Top-down.
Top-up and bottom. Sorry. Top-down, bottom-up. Sorry, can you elaborate on the question? So the question is about my co-construction seems to be top-down rather than bottom-up.
It seems, but I'm not sure. At what stage were the workers be involved in your research? Because maybe their research interests of what they really wanted to be research of could be different to what the researchers were considered very important for them.
Yeah, this is really a great question. Thank you for that. You know, when we use anthropological approach in the co-construction, so it's not that's participatory, that's not bring a group of workers to the same table and discuss about the research. We really use anthropological approach. By building the relationship with them from the day one, we use different gatekeepers, different types of gatekeepers, different kinds of community grassroots worker networks, you know, to identify the potential informants. And when we identify the potential informants, we need to drop by their working space, their home space, you know, to start relationship. And sometimes the researchers have to play the role of co-worker as well. For example, they need to be the chief vendor to understand and to support to support that participant. Otherwise, so that they can have some time to share their own life experiences, because the workers, they keep moving. They are walking in the street. They cannot spare half an hour to talk to you, because half an hour means money for them, means livelihoods for them. So it's really detailed and careful and thoughtful, time-consuming process in engaging these workers. And when they feel more comfortable, they open up more, and then we keep dropping by their workspace and their home space. And when the question about why it sounds like we are imposing our research idea on them, because maybe workers have different agenda, different research interests. So we are we are honest about what we want to achieve in this research. So one of the key output in our project is to generate the early warning systems for the workers' health, and to develop an app for the workers. This app will function as an early warning system for their health risk. So we want them to become the users of this app, and this app, we explain to them that these are the values, these are the somehow something that positive that they can see, that can be beneficial for them down the road, and when it is really voluntary process. And if they see themselves in this process, and many workers, they really want to share their own experiences, because they are very alone. They are very, these really solitary workers. They are isolated. They do not have the social network to share their experiences. So when these researchers approach them, when they know that, all of a sudden I have this network of workers to collaborate together, to get together, they feel more motivated. They see themselves in that social network. They can share their experience in adapting to heat wave, in protecting themselves better in the heat wave. So they see they see some obvious positive benefits in joining the research from our engagement.
Right. I think we're going to have some more time afterwards to discuss the details as well. But I would like to know if you have any question as well for Maya presentation. Maya? Sorry.
I have a question about your presentation, Maya. A comment, sorry. I see from your presentation and also from the background paper that there is room for making more distinctions or being more specific about what epistemic justice implies. And I think that we can distinguish between two cases. The case of hermeneutical justice, in which some groups lack the epistemic opportunity for developing the concept that they need for explaining their social experiences, that the typical case of the lack of in the past of the concept of harassment because of the lack of women participation on developing concept. And the other case is the case in which we have different knowledge systems, and some groups, they have their concepts and the mechanisms for developing these concepts, but the problem is that we don't have a structure for integrating these different knowledge systems. So I think that in this second case, we have a different kind of hermeneutical injustice, and we have a lot of space for starting to discuss this third kind, because we also have testimonial injustice. Yeah, it's a comment.
I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the comment, and I think she's spot on. Yeah, well, thanks for the comment.
Nice, thank you so much. I think we have just 1 minute for one last question over here. But people at the back, they do not feel disadvantaged.
Thank you, very nice presentations. And I think this question is for Admire. the issue on interdisciplinarity and multisectorality goes back to values and value systems. When people come together in a room, their argument is, our values are more important, our priorities are more important, and the funding that we have is for our priorities. And then you put agriculture and health and education together, and you want to make them have one long work plan as policymakers in your co-design framework, and then share those resources. You and I know that that doesn't work. It has failed to work repeatedly. And that's the ethical question. What is it that we need to do to make sure that there is dialogue on values and valorization processes in a context of scarcity? Thanks.
Thank you. Amaya?
Well, thanks. So I think what is important is to create the platforms whereby those different voices can freely express themselves, where they can freely be amplified. So yeah, it's about the creation of platforms, and for us, as I have mentioned already, the work package approach worked quite nicely, because those from the same discipline could express themselves before coming to the team, whereby we then could share what was coming from the different work packages. So it's about creation of platforms to be able to integrate the different views from people of different backgrounds and disciplines.